So, I am a conceptual artist with a background in architecture. That means I think I manage. With a background in architecture. So, I stopped doing architecture when I realized that I was actually interested in more broad aspects of the world. And when I realized that for me, the contribution of my life to society would be to do what I can do best and to somehow use who I am to find out about things. And I also found out that coming from architecture, which of course is like a mixture between art and science in itself, I would be better in doing art than doing science. Having the opportunities to go into various fields as an artist, as an outsider, being able to convince scientists of the relevance of their work and of the relevance of my work as well, and in order to convince them to collaborate them, which in turn enables me to see what they are doing and find out many different things about places and topics that would possibly be impossible to penetrate from the outside. So I'll just quickly start with 3 projects that I'm going to show. The first one is called The Earth Turns Without Me, and it starts from the notion that an artist's role is the role of the commenter, the person that understands and depicts and works upon, comments, criticizes the environment that he is living and working in. And so as a consequence, the position that I deem the right position for an artist is the position outside, the view from the outside. And this position on the outside is also a position which might be outside of society. It's a position which might result in criticizing the branch that feeds me. And this position can be... Is it better like that? Oh, okay. Sorry. So, the position of the artist is a position outside society, and which means that as an artist I would like to try to literally remove myself from anybody else in order to get to this position where I can look back and comment. So that was the mission that I set up for myself, deciding that if I wouldn't turn with the earth, turning with the earth is something that we all do have in common, right? And we cannot escape it. So if I could not turn with the earth, then I would really be at that point where I think one should be. So this was the principle. The earth spins like this, the white arrow. If I could spin like that, in the opposite direction, same speed, I would not turn with the earth. So a few calculations led to difficult results. One of them being, since we don't have so much time, one of them being that in order to not turn with the earth in Switzerland, I would have to go 1,158 kilometers per hour west. So this led to about 2 years of talking to the only guys in Switzerland that can go that fast. And after 2 years, and many stories that I'm happy to share all the time, I was sitting on the table with the Swiss Air Force demonstration team, and off we went. So What I was able to capture is this. You should, as a side note, you should not try to turn the image in your head, but focus at the center if you can see it from the brightness. But what you can see here is the Earth turning, filmed from a space which is, or a place which is fixed in space. It's a view of the planet, it's not a view of landscape or whatever. This will go on for 4 minutes. 4 minutes is the time it takes for the Earth to rotate by 1 degree of longitude. If you divide 1 day into 360 parts, you get 4 minutes. So I believe in things when you want to communicate to people, and I think that's what we are doing as artists. We have ideas, we have things we find out, we want to share, it's about communication, and so I chose something which was easy to communicate. It's easier to communicate. The table is 1 meter by 1 meter than a complicated figure. So that's why we came up with 1 degree. Now, I knew I was going to produce this film, but in these times when everything can be faked, there had to be something else, something which could only be done if I was not turning with the Earth. I mean, I could also have produced this with a small airplane and just speeding up the film, right? So I came across an idea, thankfully, actually quite short. So the process was idea 2006, starting to work on it 2008, with a break in between because there was an accident with some dead soldiers, so we had to lay low and not ask about anything. Then 2010, the flight was going to be. It took me about 8 months working very closely with the pilots, learning to understand how these airplanes fly, how you can mount cameras, getting to the point where, unfortunately I didn't bring the pictures, but imagine you have a hangar with a military plane, and you have 5 friends of mine working on a plane with a tape and putting cables in, etc. So it was quite a funny thing. So I suddenly realized that this is the sort of pictures we know showing the sky, right? The stars move when they paint these lines. But this is wrong, because this is what it looks like. It's the stars that stay still and we are moving. So I came back to the ancient principle of the camera obscura, the pinhole camera. And so I constructed a pinhole camera into this airplane, which would allow me to take a picture of the sun while we would not turn with the Earth. Hence, the sun would not produce a line, but a point. So here you can see the diagram. You have the sun, and you have the canopy, very small hole here, film on this side. And since with these kind of forces in corners, everything, one is not be able to sustain that, one couldn't see anything, I found out that I could use a special film. It's called orthochromatic film. It reacts only for blue light. So if I would cover the cockpit in red, I could have the light, the film in there, and only use the light coming across the hole to paint the picture. So this was the cockpit just before flight. This is the hole after the flight. There's some studies of sun positions. At some point you get into some quite complicated celestial mechanics, because you have to anticipate where the sun is at a certain moment and find the right spot. You have a camera with 80 centimeters of focal length. It's like a telescope almost. And then we are flying. Here's the film. You can see that I had a big hole in the beginning, so I could place the film accordingly. This is the Earth turning when you're not turning with it. I didn't see too much of that. And this is the artist, portrait of the artist not turning with the Earth, but it's And that's us, filmed from a second plane. You know, if you have a fighter jet, you can also take two. To get to the point. So we come back, the film cassette, the big moment, and then a little later in the laboratory, finding the second picture. We took a picture with the same camera with the airplane on the ground. Like photographing the sun for 4 minutes while being parked facing west. This is it. And the big thing then would be this. So this is the most costly point in the history of art. But I do like it because the point is also the symbol for not moving. If you put a pencil on a piece of paper, and don't move it, it'll leave at that point. The exhibition is just the lights and that's the way it's shown, there's a projection, there's like a vitrine with items, with flight plans, and a couple of small film loops and iPads that show like the production process, installation. And then there's the point, which is actually red, which is a nice thing that happened because in the first moment, since the black and white film, I didn't realize it was not just black and white. But when we printed this film on color paper, which was happened by chance because my printer just had color paper in the machine, we saw that because this film is based on not being susceptible to blue and being a negative film, in the end, you get a red picture. It's quite nice. And this is a projection. I usually show this film 6 meters wide because it does not really work very well if it's too small. On a computer screen it doesn't really work. So, skip forward a few years. I was working for a while as a co-leader of a team called ESA Topical Team Arts and Science. It's a team that was held by the European Space Agency. We were tasked to somehow, with art, it was a kind of paradox because they absolutely didn't want any art in space, but still they tasked us trying to get art into space. So at some point, I saw this machine at ESA in the laboratory of a medical scientist who works on gravitation. And it's called random positioning machine. Basically, it's these two frames that rotate around axes, which are rotated by 90 degrees. It rotates in a manner which is chaotic, without rules. So in the end, when you put something in the center, it thinks it's zero gravity because gravitation is coming from everywhere, basically. So a little later, I was invited to do an exhibition in Naples at the Fondazione Waldvogel. And the curator told me that he would like me to think about Giordano Bruno, who was the last scientist who was killed by the Roman Catholic Church in Rome in 1600 for stating that the sun was like any other star, or any other star was like the sun, and every planet was like the Earth. So, at some point, I was able to combine these two things. Giordano Bruno, who introduces by saying that all these celestial bodies are the same, introducing chaos and unplanningness for God into science, and the random positioning machine by calling it random planet production machine. So I started developing such a machine. Some electronics to control motors, some code was also needed. And I ended up making candles. They have 4 wicks. They will melt 90% of their wax. They're about that size. And I built this machine. So it has on top of the candle and then in the middle a heated copper funnel. So the paraffin melts, drops into the copper funnel, drops all the way down into the random positioning machine on the bottom, and it produces spheres. So we have the chaotic motion, the random motion, which generates the most regular form of a sphere. And in this notion, of course, the planets for Waldvogel. So this is like a drawing of the exhibition space in Naples. I got this beautiful basement. Here you can see a little bit how it moves in this Piranesi style cellar where the can, which is some sort of a 3D printer, but the can contains the energy it needs to release itself and to produce these planets. And these candles are multicolored, so over time when you watch this, you see the planet maybe starts with a boiling red interior and suddenly becomes red on the outside, or whatever. Here at the bottom you see how it drips. We don't have too much time, so this is another one from there. From above you can see there's a lot of innovation in here, like how can you make a copper funnel which is 100 degrees at the center, but not dangerous. I mean, it was like... So, how did I show these planets? I really do like these instruments. They're called artillery spheres. They are old astronomical instruments that were used both for study, like looking at the stars and kind of like measuring where they are at what time, but also as a demonstration piece. So I built an artillery. It's 4 meters high, and it has the planets on these steel rings in the center. The steel rings are balanced to the left and to the right, which is some sort of a way of dealing with the fact that the planetary system actually works because there's a gravitation at the center of the sun. And because we couldn't have that, I mean, we can also kind of expose anything here without this stupid gravity which is all put down. So we have at least this kind of like left and right thing. So this sphere looks pretty good in different environments. And the last project that I'll show you is called Antecedents, which means the oldest ancestors. So from building this fictitious planetary system for Waldvogel, I went back to our own Earth and thought, what is it actually, what was it in the beginning and why are we here? And so I have a colleague of mine who's an exobiologist. He works on biology on other celestial bodies. We talk about this a lot. So he pointed out that actually the reason why we exist is that there were cyanobacteria. They're single-celled organisms. They're amongst the very oldest organisms on Earth. The oldest specimens are 3.5 billion years, so 3,500 million years old. And they are prokaryotic, they have a circular DNA, and they invented in a way photosynthesis, and they worked for 2 billion years to turn the CO2 atmosphere into an oxygen atmosphere, which then gave way for finally us to live. So the idea was to create in the Zurich Helmhaus, which is the city of Zurich. It's kind of like this in Zurich. To create a proto-Earth, an old Earth, generating in this culture an environment that was actually what enabled us to exist. So I worked with biologists from the University of Zurich cultures. And we built this installation in the largest space, which is maybe as long as this space, but only half as wide. We had to separate the bacteria from the people because we had to protect the bacteria from the people. If you sneeze, you get other bacteria in there. At the same time, we had 4,000 liters of super highly concentrated nutritious solution, which is enough if some bad bacteria comes in there to generate or to grow potentially dangerous organisms. So we have a few views here. There's an airlock, and of course this also kind of produces for the visitors some sort of space station or expedition type feeling. He knows the space, or she knows the space. It's always that light. You couldn't really see the water in the beginning. It's only 4 centimeters deep. But this time you cannot enter because the exhibition space belongs to somebody else, bacteria. So this is it. Now, the exhibition is supposed to run for 8 weeks, and the first day I could get in, we started working there and inoculating the bacteria, so that about 8 days later on the opening there would be also already like a slightly green shimmer maybe in the water. Nothing happened for weeks. So we went back to the lab. This is a microscopic image of what we put in there, microcystis is the name of the bacteria. And at the same scale, this is what we found a month later. They're called nanoflagellates, and they are twice as large as the microcystis, and they exist in the tubing of old cities everywhere. By the way, microcystis, cyanobacteria exists in all the lakes and rivers also. They still exist all over the world. So these are not prokaryotes, but eukaryotes, they're modern bacteria, and in a way, they just ate up everybody. So that's why they would turn green, because they were just eaten. And we have this sort of strange situation where somebody large who's from a later generation kind of kills off everybody that was before, which is basically the same thing that the cyanobacteria did to everybody else before they were there, who was living on CO2, so it's like nature is. So I made these EVAs sometimes, and we just started again, because my biologist colleagues, they had found a sort of cyanobacteria which is even larger than nanoflagellates, so they couldn't be eaten. And that's what it was, what it looked like on the last day.